Welcome to the DIY Goalie Podcast, where hosts and goalie coaches Nathan Park and Connor Monday share their insights on how to become a better goalie.
Goalies, how's it going? My name is Connor Monday, and welcome back to the DIY Goalie Podcast. I do not have Nathan Park with me today. He is out on assignment, so it is just me in the big boy chair today. And I'm very, very pleased to have a good buddy of mine, current East Coast Hockey League Pro goaltender Luke Lush. Luke, how are we doing today, buddy?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Oh, awesome. Excellent to have you here. Much appreciated. For those who don't know, Luke and I have coached with each other a couple of summers ago. Keep in touch here and there. Great guy, excellent coach, excellent goaltender as well. Definitely has some of the better style in the league. I'm not going to lie, the hair kind of threw me off a little bit like the first time I met you, but I was like, okay, all right, whatever. And then the CCM Revoke pads. I wanted to ask you about that as well because I was like, as I was searching up and down looking for those, and I was like, where the hell did he get those? And it's like, oh, then I found out that like he screen printed them afterwards. But no, that's awesome. But Luke, we're happy to have you here. Obviously, we have some questions for you here today, and we'll just kind of jump into it.
You betcha. Excited for it.
Awesome. Well, first off, I guess let's get a little bit of an introduction on you, just kind of a bit of a background about you, your playing career, growing up in the Sherwood Park area here in Alberta, and just kind of how you got into hockey and why you became a goalie.
Yeah, for sure. Originally, my parents they grew up in the mountains in a small town called Grand Cache, not too far from the Hinton and Jasper area. And then shortly after I was born, we actually moved to Fort McMurray, and that's kind of where we originally set up our roots and where I began playing hockey. So we were there for a good part of my childhood. Didn't quite transition to be a goalie just yet, but I had been bitten by the bug. My dad was a goalie, and so I'd go watch his men's league games here and there, and I was pretty interested with that. And I always loved going into the garage and checking out his old gear. And then from there, we moved to Red Deer, and we were there for a few years, and that's where I became a full-time goalie. I tried to, everyone would get their turn in net when you're younger, and I always relished those opportunities when they came my way. And then we kind of lucked out where there was another guy in the team who wanted to be a goalie, but our coaches were adamant that he couldn't do it full time just yet. And so we kind of proposed that we split it the time instead. And so him and I kind of, we already had a full tandem going at the time we were in novice. And yeah, just never looked back from there. My dad definitely had a big influence on that too. Like I said, he was a goalie as well. And even actually his dad was also a goalie as well. So I guess it was kind of in the stars. There's only a matter of time till I did that. Fingers crossed if I ever have a son that maybe he's smart. He's the one that breaks the chain and smartens up and decides to be a forward or something. But we'll see if that happens. And then
I feel like that's one of those things where it happens. Because my dad was a goalie. My grandpa, ironically enough, was not. Then I became one, and then my younger brother became one as well. So like it always starts. It's always because of dad. So right?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, dad was a goalie, so then everybody else beyond has to be a goalie as well.
Totally. Yeah. And but yeah, I really, I'm really fortunate to have made that decision, about 20 years ago almost now. And after a few years in Red Deer, we moved to Sherwood Park. And yeah, my family's been based out of there ever since. But even so, I have kind of been all over since then. I played my minor midget year in Grand Prairie, and then returned back to Sherwood Park for a couple years to finish out midget, and then had 3 different towns in junior before going down south for school.
Right. I have your elite prospects up here. So you spent a couple years with the Sherwood Park, 1 year with the Sabres, 1 year with the Flyers. Like you said, you spent the 2013-14 season with the Grand Prairie Storm, U16 double AAA. Went back to the Sherwood Park Kings, U18 and AAA for a couple of years. Then you spent a couple of times with LaRonge Ice Wolves, Camrose Kodiaks, and Drayton Valley Thunder of the ECHL, respectively. Sacred Heart University of the NCAA, and then currently with the Tulsa Oilers there. So I guess just kind of just talk about like the different experiences there, going from part of my ignorance here, but part of going from major junior from minor midget, bantam, whatever, to going into juniors to playing university and then going to play pro. Obviously, we'll touch a little bit more about that afterwards. It's just kind of the career there and just this kind of the experiences that came with it.
Totally. It's been kind of interesting to look back on my career. Not that it's over yet by any means, but
No, of
uh,
course.
whenever I do look at it, and then it's nice to have my dad to kind of, he gives me a little bit of wisdom here and there. And a lot of the instances in my career that have led to big changes, and oftentimes they're pretty sudden and unexpected, have been some of the biggest opportunities I've received. And even though they felt absolutely devastating at the time, so I ended up in Grand Prairie my minor midget year, uh, really unexpectedly. I went from thinking I was playing, minor midget in Sherwood Park with a bunch of my buddies that I played with the year prior, to getting cut just over a day before the league deadline for rosters were set, to having to call around the league to see who hadn't already submitted their rosters. And I remember I got cut just about around midnight on a Sunday night, and then I had to go to school the next morning. And thankfully, my parents were able to help and make a lot of those calls for me while I was in my English and social class. And then just before lunchtime, I got a text from my mom saying, "Hey, you got to pack up your stuff. We're going to Grand Prairie to try out tonight." So we did
Okay.
the 4 or 5 hour drive that evening, skated with the minor midget team and then the midget double A team, just so they get more of a look at me. And then we drove home, or most of the way home, because she had to work the next morning at 8 a.m. back in the Edmonton area. And
Right.
so we drove to our extended family's house in Grand Cache, kind of where my parents grew up, slept for a couple hours, and then got back on the road. And of course, it was blizzarding and whatnot. And it was just, exactly like you'd write up in a story in Alberta in the mountains. Um,
Typical Alberta weather.
yeah,
Yeah.
made it back to Spruce Grove just in time for my mom to clock in for work and for me to get a little bit of rest. And then, yeah, got told that morning that I'd made the team in Grand Prairie. So I was home for that day to pack up my things, and we're back on the road the next day for my first practice. So it was pretty sudden and a lot to go through for only being 15 at the time, and finding a
Right.
billet that day and everything. And, my parents kind of saying goodbye to me when I was, frankly too young to be away from home, but it ended up being a great experience. And I had a really strong second half to that year, and I was able to develop a lot. And I was fortunate that my billet brother and I both affiliated for the major midget team and would practice with them a couple times a week. And so that really helped me in the step to major midgets, and made me feel comfortable in going back to Sherwood Park and trying out there, and ultimately making the team and, playing well for 2 seasons there. And then from that point, I had a really hard time finding a junior A team. Not that statistics are everything, but I put up good numbers both years in major midget, and especially the second year, and we had a strong team, which helped my case. But I just couldn't quite get my foot in the door with the team. I had a lot of teams interested, but no one willing to commit to me. And it came pretty late in the summer where Laurent was willing to sign me, and I was really happy to have something a little more solidified. And I went there, and even the first little bit, I felt comfortable at the level, but I wasn't really getting a lot of bounces, and I had bad numbers to start. And I eventually became the third string goalie there pretty early in the season. And it was really difficult at times. We were a really struggling team, and to not even be playing when it's a struggling team didn't really help me much. And I didn't have much of a resume
Right.
either at the time, so I couldn't even go ask for a trade or anything to go play more, because I would have just been released. And
Kind of just hard for one of those things, like you want to you want to showcase what you got and to play for this team, but the team's just kind of just rolling with the punches right now, and so
yeah,
they're not necessarily saying what's the worst that could happen, but it's just like
yeah,
we're not really in a position to put you out there either, right? Because we want to be
totally.
able to ice our best roster possible.
Totally. And to their credit too, like I wasn't doing myself any favors at the start of the year when I did get in the net. I remember there was a stretch of time where before there was three of us and I was the backup. I played well my first start, and we lost, but I was solid in there and felt good about my performance. And then following that, our other goalie, who was getting the majority of the starts, he went through a tough stretch. And I remember after 5 or 6 each game, he'd get pulled somewhere in the second period, and I would go in and I'd be stellar. I'd either shut
Right.
the door or maybe give up one more, and then I would get the following start, only to not be as good. I would give up 5 or 6 on anywhere from 35 to 45, and it just wasn't quite cutting it, and we weren't getting the wins. It wasn't bad enough to get pulled, but not good enough to keep the net. So then we'd go back to the other goalie, and again, he just wasn't in his best mind frame, I guess, at the time, and was really struggling. And so he had 5 consecutive starts where he got pulled. and I'd go in and I'd play really well, and then I'd start the following game, but again, I just wouldn't play that well. And so I had all these
So
opportunities where he would struggle and I'd go in and do well in relief, but I wasn't really taking charge of it afterwards. And so that's when we picked up a third goalie. And, I had to understand that it's junior hockey's a business. Unfortunately, there is a bottom line. They're trying to make money, and the coaching staff is doing it for a living, and they've got families to feed. And so they've got to do everything in, their power to not just keep their job and do the bare minimum, but to win and try to, be an asset to the organization. And if you're not going to help, him on his journey or his mission, then, you're of no use. So I wasn't doing myself any favors there. And so he had to look elsewhere. And that's when we picked up a third goalie who came in and played well in his first few games. So that basically relegated me to the press box for a pretty good stretch.
So then, what's? I mean, not this is in my list of questions here, but you dropped a really interesting nugget. Where what's the mentality then with that? Like you come in relief, you do play very well, and then you get to start the next game, and you don't do very well, and then all of a sudden at some point you're bringing in the third goalie as well. That's got to be taxing for you mentally as a goalie, right? On top of just like now, like almost all three of your positions are in jeopardy, whether it be 1A or whether it be position number one, number two, number three. So just what, like, was there any kind of thought process where you're like, you're potentially not going to be on this team for very much longer, or was it just
Yeah,
I can imagine so, but it's like like what's how do you overcome that as a goalie?
totally. At the end of the day, there's a lot of things outside that's going on that you can't control. And while I didn't take charge of those opportunities to where I had starts, having another goalie come in and being relegated to that kind of third position was a little freeing in a sense that I said, really, all I can do is take care of each day at like one day at a time, and take care of the things within my control. And really, all that was working my butt off, doing whatever I could to improve for when I did potentially get a chance, and trying to enjoy the game as best I could. I was pretty happy to be done with high school at the time. I was taking one college course and it was a bit of a joke. It wasn't that difficult or time consuming for that matter. I thought to myself, I was like,
What college course? Sorry,
just
what
it's just
college course did you?
an English class, just English 101.
Oh,
So
okay.
it was pretty basic. Couple books that all had movies, so you can kind of fill in the blanks there. Uh,
Sure.
but it was really freeing. I said, what more could you ask for? I've got free housing. I've got food supplied to me by wonderful billets. I live just a few minutes from the rink, and we're in a tiny remote town where there's as much ice as I want. So it's like, what, life could be a whole lot worse than that. And
Sure.
so I made the most of it. I worked my butt off every day. I stayed on the ice for, hours on end. I remember one of our forwards was in a similar boat, and we were good buddies, and we would be in the press box, kind of goofing around all game. And then after the game was over and the guys got out of the room, we'd put our gear on and go on the ice because we were allowed to close up the rink ourselves and everything. And we'd stay out there for, until we got too tired or until it was past curfew and we had to head home.
Right.
And it was kind of a daily occurrence. And I'd stay on the ice for 2, 3 hours a day. And I was just really enjoying it. I do love skating, and it paid off. And yeah, there was a sense of, I don't know if I'm going to be sticking around here all that long, but I know that while I was there, I was going to make the most of it. And if I ended up somewhere else, then so be it. And I'd make the most of that situation too. And it did get close a couple times. I even had goalie coaches from home reaching out to teams in the KIJHL and Junior B in British Columbia. And I wasn't too keen on it at the time because I was playing for free in the SJ, whereas Junior B is pay to play, and I didn't really have the funds to
Right.
to pay for
Yeah.
those fees. And so I lucked out, I guess, to with someone else's misfortune. But our head coach was eventually let go during that stretch, and our interim coach didn't know the team very well, and he just said, I know we're not supposed to have three goalies, so I'm going to give each guys a look to play, and we'll go from there. And I think a lot of that work I'd put in and I'd kind of let go of any sort of outside results was really freeing. And in my first start back, I played really well and we won. And I went on a very short run, I guess, there for, we only won 6 games out of 58 that year. But in the next, I think it was 4 games, I'd won 3 of them and lost in overtime in another. So I had a pretty solid stretch there, and which kind of solidified my spot there. And one of our goalies that kind of solved the problem for the 3 of us and was actually called up to the Western League.
Okay.
And out of the 3 of us, I actually played the most games out of anyone there and had a great season development wise. It was hard with our win-loss record, but I saw a lot of rubber that year. It made me a better goalie for it as well.
Perfect. Yeah, just looking at elite prospects here, you played 38 games, had a 4.8 goals against average, 895 save percentage. You did go 27-1, but like you said, the team wasn't exactly doing all that hot that year. Second year in the 2017-18 season, continuing with LaRange, you played 10 games, had a 4.19 GAA, 902 save percentage, with 191, and then at some point throughout the season, you transferred over to Camrose. So what came about there? Because you went 26 games, you went 2.92 GAA, 0.907 save percentage. You got a shutout, so good job.
Thank you.
You went 9-6, and then you had a bit of a kind of a short-lived playoff run there. I don't know if I'm reading this correctly, but 3 games played in the playoffs, 2.26 goals against average, and a 0.917 save percentage there.
Yeah. Yeah, that following season, I'd returned to the Range. We had a new head coach, where that was hired midway through the previous season. And, I did have a lot of, I guess I was a little careful in going back there just because of some of the struggles that we had the year prior. And my goal was to move on to a Division I school. And yeah, I went back and I gave it my best shot. And eventually I just felt that the fit wasn't going to be the best moving forward. And so I eventually asked for a trade. And, now I think the statute of limitations have gone by, but I'd gotten word that there were some teams in the Alberta League that were interested in me. And I figured that would give me my best shot to move on to where I wanted to be. And I got sent home for asking out. And so I sat at home
really?
for just a little over 4 weeks as kind of, I don't know, sending a message to the guys who had also asked out or were looking to. And so that was a struggle as well. And I got to, shout out to my goalie coaches back home who were doing everything they could to find me any little bit of ice possible so I could kind of try to stay fresh. Yeah, funny enough too, I just trying to stay in contact with their coach or a GM in Larange to kind of get the process going, because I was growing a little restless staying at home, and I think my parents were too if they weren't used to having me in the house for that long. So
somebody get this kid out of here, gee.
And funny enough, anytime I tried to call our coach and GM with a 780 like Edmonton area number, he wouldn't pick up. And I called him from my phone, my parents' phones, our house phone, the phone at my gym, like any phone I could get my hands on, right? You wouldn't answer. And that same player actually who used to shoot on me after games, he was living in the area, but he had a Saskatchewan phone number. And so I brought him coffee and breakfast to work one day just to borrow his phone. And as soon as I called our coach with the Saskatchewan number, he picked up second ring. And it was a little bit of a funny conversation. I was at my wit's end, and I was pretty frustrated at this point with all that time that had passed. So once he'd asked who was on the phone, I said it was, "Hey, it's Lusher. It's good to see your phone still works. Let's get this trade going already." And funny enough, it worked. I got traded the next day. I got sent to Camrose and started up there shortly afterwards. And yeah, it was a good season, and I really loved the setup there. We have great facilities and really good coach who was a great mentor there as well. He wasn't just focused on building good hockey teams, which he had, and he built that program pretty much himself from the ground up over the past 20 years at that point. And he was also keen on building better people, and I totally ate that up. I was really happy with the structure and everything that we had there coming from my previous situation, and I was really thankful for it. But I knew I still had a little more to give, and unfortunately, that just didn't work out that season. And then the following year, I came in and was ready to really give it my all and leave it all out there. Going to my last season of junior eligibility, I even went all out and ordered pretty bold red and black gear and got a painted mask and everything to go along with it. And just a few games in, I kind of got my heart broken and got traded to Drain Valley. But which again too, I was devastated when that happened, just because I loved Camrose so much, and it was unreal. And I could go from my home in Sherwood Park to my billet house in 40 minutes flat. Uh, sometimes I didn't give my,
Yeah,
yeah, sometimes I
yeah,
didn't give myself
yeah,
quite enough time to get home for curfew, but I usually cut it pretty close. But
yeah. Camrose
drain
is
fit,
beautiful.
yeah.
If you've ever been to Alberta, and as I've traveled through there for going to Banff, Jasper, or
No,
wherever.
oh, sorry, you're thinking
Nope.
of Canmore.
Oh, Canmore, right?
Yeah,
Okay, yeah.
I do
All right,
agree
hold
though.
on.
Camrose is
Don't listen
beautiful,
to me then.
but that doesn't
Yes.
quite have the mountains. But it's a beautiful little town, kind of surrounded by a lot of agricultural communities, and they've got everything there you could possibly need. It's actually a really beautiful town, uh, but yeah, Drayton Valley, maybe not quite a little rough around the edges, but ended up being an absolute blast. I was so thankful for that opportunity, and even though I was pretty bummed out about it at first, it
Right.
ended up being the best thing for me. And I still think about it quite a bit now, especially the group of guys I had there. A lot of longtime friends on that team.
Awesome. Yeah, no, Nathan's gonna have a field day with this afterwards. He's mistaking Canmore. I always do that. I always mistake Canmore for Camrose and vice versa.
Don't you feel bad? I remember when my team in Laurent made the same mistake when I got traded to Camrose. They on their press
Oh,
release
okay.
they said Canmore and it had everybody confused. But yeah, so
Okay,
don't you feel
gotcha.
bad?
Fair enough. Okay, so then after that, you spent 4 seasons with Sacred Heart University in the NCAA,
Mhm.
and then a season with the RIT, the Rochester Institute of Technology, there. So I guess if you would like, you can briefly touch on that because I do see some awards attached with it. We probably could have talked about this a little bit as well because in the 18-19 season, you were the AJHL North All Star team and as well as the AJHL Best Goaltender, and then the 2023-2024 season, you were the NCAA champion in the AHA. Not sure what
Mhm.
that's referring to. And then as well as NCAA AHA regular season champion there as well.
Yeah, you bet. Like I said too, I remember I was on the verge of not reporting to Drain Valley when I got traded just because I was so heartbroken at the time. And my billet in Camrose, was the last thing we were pretty close, and he was upset that I was leaving as well. But he kind of urged me to go and try it out because I guess he knew the head coach there. He knew him pretty well, and I'm so thankful that he did because based on that alone, I just kind of went on a whim and I didn't pack really any of my stuff aside from my gear and just went and forgot to tell my family that I was reporting because originally I wasn't going to, and I'm really glad I did. Like I said, I had a absolute wonderful experience there and an unreal head coach in Eric Thurston, who he's now coaching with Trail in the BCHL and was a longtime coach with the Golden Bears at U of A and won, multiple national championships. And it was unreal. I couldn't have asked for more things there. I had an unreal billet family, and like I said, an unreal group of guys. And luckily enough to it, I had a good season personally, and it just was the right fit there based for how I play and our systems and whatnot really allowed me to kind of give everything I have at that level. And, luckily enough that worked out where I was able to get a couple, individual recognitions and awards. And, most importantly, I was able to get my education covered and go down to go down south and kind of, achieve that goal I've had for a little while. Yeah. And then at Sacred Heart, uh, I had 4 very different seasons there. My freshman year, we were still sharing the Islanders AHL rink with their affiliate. And I wasn't
Is it
getting,
still was it still Bridgeport? It was
yeah,
Bridgeport, right?
it's in
The
Bridgeport, yeah.
Sound Tiger, yeah.
And so, yeah, we were sharing the space with the Sound Tigers and, kind of getting used to the life in the States a little bit. And this time being away with no built parents and just some adjustments to be made. And my game just wasn't where it needed to be. And, I didn't quite appreciate that enough at the time. And I thought I should have been playing when I wasn't. And so there was a lot of frustrations there that season, and but it led to a lot of growth as well. And then the sophomore season, I'd had a really good summer, a longer summer thanks to COVID, and I came in, I think, and with a lot of improvement, and kind of took over the job in the second half of the year, even though we had a limited season, unfortunately. Uh, and started playoffs for us, and then I kind of built up a lot of momentum going to my third year, but unfortunately, I had injured my ankle in the summer at the end of the season in playoffs, and then I re-injured in the summer, leaving me unable to play when we first got back to school, and eventually having to get ankle surgery. So that put me on the shelf for a while, and I had a really tough recovery with that. It was supposed to be a pretty minor operation, with a 4 to 6 week recovery. And that eventually went down to 17 weeks until I was cleared, and I still wasn't even anywhere near 100%.
Did they know why? Did they like why is such a drastic?
Not really. It
No,
just
no idea.
I originally the recovery was going great. I was on schedule, maybe even a touch early, and I had a setback kind of out
Okay.
of nowhere. My foot just started swelling up, and I had to start off, completely over. I had to put my foot back in the boot and get back on the crutches, and had to take it a lot slower the second time around. And and that was as difficult as that was, as much as I wanted to be playing. Again, that was another hurdle to kind of get over, and I think made me better in the end. Dealing with that kind of mental frustration, I dealt with it pretty well. And yeah, I came back and I played a few games, and I played really well, and had good numbers and whatnot, but had some bad luck. And shortly after coming back, I tore my shoulder really well, or really bad,
Oh
and
no.
needed shoulder
Yeah.
surgery, and that was the end of my season and took up most of my summer as well. But the difficulties I had with the ankle recovery, I guess, served me well with the shoulder, and I dealt with it even better that time, and I was in good spirits going through with it. And it set me up for a senior season where I got to play a lot, and it was just that was a much better experience than kind of what I was hoping for the previous 3 years. And but I was just happy that it was all coming together then, and had some success, and we had a pretty strong team, and we didn't nearly finish out as strong as we'd have liked to, and or myself individually, but we had a really cool experience that year too, where we opened up a new campus, or a new rink on campus, and that was a ton of fun. So we
Okay.
went from being in a big building off campus where we didn't get too many fans to being right on campus, selling out every night with a few thousand people behind us, and those college crowds are the best too. Like, they're really into it, and usually pretty intoxicated too, which helps the experience for us on the ice. And
Yeah.
it was a whole lot of fun that year, and it was a really nice cherry on top of my experience there. And kind of all those games played helped set me up to get some interest in the transfer portal, just because it wasn't going to work for me to go back to Sacred Heart for my 5th year, uh, which is okay. And I had a great experience there, and there's no hard feelings, but it really set me up well to you know have somewhere else to go to the following year. Whereas if I don't get all those minutes my last year, I don't think that opportunity is available. And I lucked out, and I was able to get my master's covered, you know, as well out of it. So it really served me well. So I was really happy with it.
Goaltending is a matter of inches. As goalies, we need to gain every advantage possible. This is where Visual Edge can help. With Visual Edge's cutting edge cognitive and visual training, you'll improve your reaction time, anticipation, and overall decision making. Imagine seeing the puck faster, reacting quicker, and making those clutch saves.
Walking in one on one, makes a shot, big save by the goaltender, and it comes back the other way.
Ready to unlock your full potential? Visit visualedge.com and use code DIYPOD for 20% off. That's DIYPOD at visualedge.com. VIZUAL edge.com.
Having been at a couple of Golden Bears games, I don't think the energy at the Golden Bears games could match the NCAA at any by any stretch of the imagination. Like, people down there just they love their sports in general. I mean, like, obviously the football and basketball are the two major ones down there, but I can imagine that the crowd energy is the same when it comes to hockey. Um, so moving on from that, you end up now with the Tulsa Oilers of the East Coast Hockey League.
Hmm.
But before I ask you about that, you had some very wild and interesting pads
Yeah.
down there. So I wanted to ask you this here quickly. How much of a gear guy are you? What are you currently wearing this year? We saw it in the balanced Instagram takeover that you did, which
Yeah.
we'll talk about in a second. But I think my favorite, they're the two sets that I really remember. Like I said, the CCM Revokes,
Hmm.
looking like the Reebok Revokes from way long ago, and the looks like the tiger print kind of pads
Yeah.
that you had there as well. Obviously, all screen printed, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
But just how much of a gear guy are you? You know, do you spend a lot of time kind of tweaking different stuff, and then just kind of what are you rocking now, and just like kind of just take it from there.
Totally. Yeah, I'm definitely quite a bit of a gear guy. I think it's the best part of goaltending, honestly, and I think it's what gets a lot of people into, in between the pipes, and something I really like too, like I said early on, when I'd go through the garage and be able to look at my dad's, current set and his maybe a couple of his older ones too. I thought it was just so neat and made me want to, be a little bit more like him and get some of my own. So, yeah, I've always liked it, and I figured why not take full advantage of it. Not, only a couple guys on each team get the opportunity to really customize their stuff. Players maybe aren't as fortunate as we are in that, aspect. They outside of skate and sticks, there isn't really much that they get to work with or, show some of their personality. So I like to use it. And I think, it's really fun. And if, I know some guys like the all white stuff, and I can't say much because that's pretty much what I'm wearing now, but I think it's really cool to have neat gear. And this is kind of what I'm wearing now. I guess I'll show the cameras. This little card they gave us this year is just a pretty plain Hyperlite 2 set. I've got the Vapor 90, like the 580 clone glove, and then the Vapor two-piece blocker, which is pretty similar to the CCM or Lefebvre blockers. But yeah, at school, at Sacred Heart, we had to wear CCM, which was fine. I was wearing that my final year junior, and I like the stuff. And it finally became available to us. I got in contact with the goalie rep who kind of took care of the college and pro guys. And the CCM was just launching their printed designs and whatnot for a lot of the pro guys. So I shot my shot and reached out and was hoping to see if I could get in on some of that. And luckily enough, I was able to, and was able to get the Access 2 line a little early as well. So I wanted to look at some of the older, either Reebok or Coho designs that I could make work. And at the time, CCM wasn't printing on their outer rolls just yet. So I wanted to make sure whatever design I went with kind of, wouldn't clash with that. And a lot of their older stuff, kind of the graphics rolled over onto the outer roll. So the Revoke I thought was the best that I could use, and I wanted to make sure that I used a lot of color. So yeah, I had mostly red with some silver and the kind of the white tribal graphic down the middle, and I think they turned out great. And CCM did an awesome job.
They were fantastic. Like I've always wanted a set because Delorier had those when he was with the Oilers. The copper outside, the blue tribal thing in the middle, and the white inside. Those were I wish they'd bring those back. Honestly, like you had me fooled. I was so excited. I was like, man, CCM's really like taking over Reebok here, and they're gonna bring them back. And then I found out that they were DigiPrint. I was like, oh,
yeah,
you got me.
So
but
yeah, but I mean, I guess that's just a testament to how well CCM did in the printing job. I know they'd even went as far as making fake stitching on all the parts of the graphic as they printed it on and stuff. So it was pretty cool. I really liked that set, and they served me well. And sure enough, that was the year that I got to play a lot of games too with Sacred Heart. So they definitely saw a lot of action. And then going into RIT, we were the Tigers there, and now we had full range to kind of wear whatever gear we wanted there. And I still wanted to stick with CCM. I had a really good relationship with the rep there, and they've been good to me. But we were a Bauer school, and so we had more perks offered to us if we went with Bauer. Like I think I got 3 gloves that year and a couple blockers and stuff. So it made sense. And I'd used Bauer in the past, and so I went and switched there, and they had they have some crazy graphic options as well. So I'd gone with the white portion of that gear is kind of the bottom portion of the Tiger head logo we have. It kind of matches that stripe, and then I'd put Tiger print and stripes all over them and stuff too. So those are pretty bold as well, and got my number and the team logo on the side too. And so I really like that setup, and those are great too. And they held up well too. And my dad's actually currently wearing those now at his skates. So he's been a fan of those too. And they were, I was just a little weary, I guess, going into pro hockey with those. I know a lot of older kind of old school coaches aren't huge on really bold gear and stuff. And frankly, there's not really any teams that would match with. I don't know many other Tiger teams in North America. So I was kind of on the search for something new, and I didn't want to necessarily break the bank either. I was a broke college student coming out of school, and gear's not cheap these days. So luckily enough, I had a friend with a bit of a connection who helped me get into the set I'm in now just before training camp started. And so I owe him a big one, and I'm probably going to get him a nice big dinner here next time I see him. But yeah, so I've been in something a little more plain now, but it's getting time. I'm going to be ordering something shortly here soon, but I think unfortunately they're going to be pretty boring compared to some of the previous ones.
Sure. So, I guess just going to the gear there, just like what like is there anything that like within the gear that you like about just in goalie gear in general? Anything that you like, anything that you dislike, and kind of how much free range and customization with the pads that you have had did you have over them? Right, like because like even like with the skates, like I think of like the Lundqvist loop with the Bauer
Hmm.
pads, right? He kind of pioneered that and such. So
Yeah,
how much tweaking with the pads have you done? Are you doing, or is it just kind of like I like the feel of the CCM Access pads
yeah,
with the Revo graphic on it versus the Bowers that you're in now, kind of type
totally.
of deal.
Yeah, I've really liked both Bauer sets I've been in recently, and that last Axis set I was in as well. Uh, but yeah, I definitely do a decent amount of tweaking to my gear. I think the way it's built now, there's less available to goalies to really modify as there might have been in the past. Like I know you hear stories of guys like Eddie Belfour who knew his gear inside and out and was constantly, had a needle and thread in his hand and he was modifying something to his stuff. Whereas just the way the stuff is built now, it's harder to mess with.
Sure.
Uh, but I definitely do tweak things here and there. I'm always messing with the strapping a little bit and maybe ordering different things to go on it. And I for a while I did something a little different with my knee strap, and that was something I had to modify. And I still modify the perimeter lacing on my glove a little bit just to help it close easier and open up wider. That I know a lot of people are maybe scared to get in there and start untying things on their gloves, and reasonably
Right.
so. I've come close to messing it up a couple times, and that's pretty bad. Uh, Blockers are usually pretty straightforward. I don't touch those much, but I modify my chest protectors a lot. That's the one thing I'm pretty picky with. I've been wearing the same pair of arms on my chest protector for I think this is my third or fourth season at least with this set, and the set I had
Yeah.
before that were the exact same, and I wore those for 2 or 3 years. So they get pretty beat up, and I just can't seem to like some of the newer ones that come out. So I always end up with a new chest protector and take the arms off and put these old ones in after trying the new ones, and then just kicking them to the curb after a couple weeks. Uh,
Right.
in junior, I had an old Coho chest protector. It was a Jason LaBarber
Really?
Pro
Wow.
Return, and it was essentially a Reebok P1, which even at that time would have been old. And I modified the crap out of it. I must have had the biggest shoulders in the league, and I was pretty wide, and because there's no really rules at that point, and no one's checking. And yeah, definitely took up a little more space with that one. I haven't gone crazy like that since, but I always
Okay.
added something here or there just for a little protection, and just for feel. But I always liked masks too. Those are the one piece of equipment I keep over the years. I've had a couple masks that I really liked, and I think it's just kind of that's the one where you really see a lot of personality sometimes. And my dad's always kind of kept his old ones that he's gotten painted as well. And so
I
yeah,
feel like I feel like that's a goalie thing because I
yeah,
got my novice to peewee one
hmm
there, and then that one's the Hackfa Bantam to midget one, and then served me well for a little bit in playing beer league as well. And then you take one too many off the face, and you're like,
yeah,
I gotta switch this out. So
yeah,
no, I feel like with everybody, masks is kind of just that one where
totally,
you got to keep it, because like
yeah,
you spend a lot of money on it as well, especially if you get it custom painted as well. We had a guy from Calgary, goes by Jabo Airbrush. I'm not sure if
oh yeah,
you've
yeah,
heard of him. Yeah, Jacob Markstrom's a
hmm
mass painter there, and among a few other goalies. Um, so we've talked about gear. We've talked about kind of your playing career through junior and college. Now you're in the pro levels, playing in the
hmm
East Coast Hockey League with the Tulsa Oilers. How did that come about? And is there any kind of AHL/NHL component? If you are allowed to talk about it, we'd love it. But obviously, if you're not, then we're not gonna press that on you. Is it just one of those things? Like, did Tulsa reach out and like have you had any contact with the Gulls or with the Ducks or anything about potentially signing, or just kind of, are you just kind of in the system and you're just there?
I wish there was an AHL or NHL component to my contract, 'cause I'd be making a whole lot more money than I am currently. But I guess there has been a little contact. It was originally I had switched my representation this summer, and they've been great so far. So shout out to them. And after my final season at RIT, I didn't get many minutes there, and we had a really successful season as a team. So there wasn't much I could say about it either, as much as I would have. Wasn't really what I was expecting for the goalie situation going in, which is fine. I had a lot of great memories from there, but it left me with not a whole lot of pro options after the season, and I knew that I might have been in tight getting a pro deal just based off my resume, and frankly, that's what they all look at, right? They've got so many options out there, and they don't have time to really do any deep scouting, and heck, their seasons go longer than the college season anyway, so they're not, at least at the East Coast level, they don't have scouts that are out there watching your games. They do at the NHL level, and after that, it's pretty slim. And so, yeah, I was really fortunate that my new agents were able to get me in contact and get interest from Tulsa, and I signed with them pretty much right away as soon as it became available. And so I went on the rest of the summer knowing I was heading to Tulsa, and this is where minor pro hockey can be really crazy. And I lucked out where in the last few days at home, when I was gearing up and getting things ready for the long drive down to Oklahoma and to get ready for camp, I got a call from our coach here, and just basically letting me know that John Gibson has appendicitis and was going to be out for a few weeks. And because of that, everyone in the Ducks organization kind of got shifted up a little bit, and that the Gulls were going to be short a goalie for camp, and asked if I would want to fill a spot. And I said, you bet. And I was on a plane the next day down to San Diego. And so it can happen pretty quickly. And it was just me and one other goalie there at camp. And I was there for all of camp, and then a couple days afterwards, I got to dress for preseason game, which was cool, and just had an all-around great experience there. And so it was really neat to have that as my first taste of pro hockey. And not only that, it really set me up well for when I eventually got sent down to Tulsa, just feeling really ready and prepared for it. And so I felt great coming to camp here, but was kind of stuck to that third goalie role with our two NHL contract goalies, and kind of much like I was back in the Range, I've just taken this opportunity as the third guy to be on the ice absolutely as much as possible, and to be in the gym and working on things and doing vision training and doing yoga constantly to try to just be the best version of myself and really take this as development time. And I think my games have improved a lot this year, and I'm just waiting for any opportunity to play and making the most of it when it does come along.
So obviously they give preference to the NHL contract goalies first in terms of playing time, eh?
Yeah, totally, and reasonably so. It's it's they do have some influence, like the NHL teams, and those prospects of theirs are their assets, right? And they want to see those developed, and as an organization, they have a bit of an obligation here to to help develop those assets, right? And we, even though we're not a Rangers affiliate, or even when I signed, our coach, was up front and told me that they had agreed to take on a Rangers goalie because they didn't have room in their system. And they're both great goalies. They're awesome dudes too, and they're really good goalie partners. And so I want all the best for them, and I want them when they're here to play well so that they get more opportunities, at the league above.
Yeah.
And that gives me opportunities here, and hopefully allows me to move up as well at some point.
Okay. So does the day-to-day kind of routine change at all? And I'm more so focusing on like the game day routines. You go through your ball drills, your stretches, or anything of the sort. Does that change going from, you know, when you were playing with Shore Park, Grand Prairie, up to when you were playing with Larange in college and the AJHL, up to where you are now, or does it relatively stay the same?
Yeah, it definitely does change. Every team has their own dynamics and stuff, and schedules. And I think it's important for goalies to be flexible about that as well. I think oftentimes we get tied too much to routines to the point where they become superstitions. And I remember, years ago, this was really freeing for me. Ben Scrivens was doing some sort of live stream and interview and or kind of Q&A thing, and someone had asked him if he had superstitions, and what was originally pretty lighthearted interview or Q&A session, he kind of snapped and said he's dead set against superstitions, and the reason being is if I have a superstition, by doing it, I'm only now allowing myself the possibility of maybe playing well. And if I don't do it, I have it set in my mind that I'm not going to play well because I didn't tie my shoes a certain way or something, ridiculous or stupid like that.
Right.
And just because you did it right, it's not guaranteeing that you're going to play well. It's just now you might. And so it's really freeing to sway from that. And that's actually a big difference or a different approach I took going into my final year of juniors, where I found a lot of success. And the analogy I made, and I tell anyone who's willing to listen, and they kind of roll their eyes after a couple times of telling it, but I'd use this simple analogy of just drops in a bucket. And so I pictured in mentally a big, big pail or big bucket that you'd see anywhere. And for every hour I've ever spent trying to become a better goalie, right? Whether that's on ice, off ice, whatever it is, you name it. I added a drop to the bucket. And eventually that bucket gets pretty full. It's pretty heavy. And whatever level the water's at is my ability to stop a puck, however you want to measure that, whatever units, right? It's my X ability to stop the puck. And just because I didn't tie my shoes a certain way, or, if I messed up my tape job or something like that, right? Or even as far as if I didn't sleep the best the night before, that doesn't mean that all of a sudden half the water was dumped out of the bucket. Like, it's still just as full as it was yesterday and before I messed up the superstition routine. And that gave me a lot of confidence and a little bit of swagger even to know that no matter what happens outside of my control, or even things within my control that just don't go the right way sometimes, it's not going to change my ability to stop the puck and get in front of it, right? And that was really freeing, and it just, provided me with a whole load of confidence going in. And it really changed that mentality, whereas in years past, if some things went wrong, I maybe over fixated on them and got worried and anxious and, wouldn't allow myself to play well and to be free out there because, something small went wrong. And so that was a big shift for me, and it's led to a lot of growth in my game as well. And it's just also helped with like anxiety performance and stuff too. Like I can kind of go through and, still be just an average person and not a crazy goalie on game days, right? But then I guess back to your question is pro hockey is a little different because there's no team led or like dynamic warm up or anything like that. You have maybe some, you might have a meeting, maybe a little bit of video, and sometimes you don't even have a meeting or anything. They just tell you like, hey, be here 2 hours before and just be ready to go on the ice on time. And there's not really much said. And so you're kind of left to your own devices to take care of a lot of that. And even furthermore too, you're on your own for meals and whatnot too. Whereas in college, we were kind of pampered and babied, where we were given, heck, my last year at Sacred Heart, we get given meals the night before a game. And then we get breakfast, lunch, I guess pregame on game days, plus post-game meal all at the rink. And so you never had to worry about cooking or anything really. And then you get to pro hockey, and it's like you kind of have to have your meals prepped and ready to go because you don't want to spend all day in the kitchen before you have to go to the rink. So there's a little adjustment like that, but having the right approach to it, it allows you to go about your business and take the few things you need to do to feel prepared and help you perform at your best, right? Whether it's ball drills and stretches and whatnot and dynamic warm-ups, just plan those accordingly. And if they don't go perfectly right, then that's fine too. But I think being open to some flexibility is huge for young goalies.
I really like that analogy, the bucket one, because I think in a day and age now where superstitions are all for lack of a better term, all the rage, right? To hear something like what you had just said, it's like you have all these tools in the toolbox, right? And you were a good goalie yesterday. You're going to be a good goalie today. You're going to be a better goalie tomorrow. That's at least that's the hope, right? So don't essentially allow yourself to be handicapped because you didn't,
Totally. Yeah, that's the biggest thing is that you don't want to be victim to a superstition, and it's okay to have them. And they do provide a sort of feeling of comfort or relax, like familiarity, and that's great. But too often you see people freak out if it just doesn't go the right way. Like the classic one that everyone knows is the Sidney Crosby stick-handling through the McDonald's ad on the ice, right?
Right. Yeah.
And if he, for whatever reason, one day didn't do it, no
It's
one's
not
going to
going to
think
change anything.
he's still one of the best players of all time, right?
Right.
It hasn't changed anything. Or if he totally messes it up, or if one day McDonald's doesn't want to sponsor the NHL anymore and their logo isn't anywhere to be found, he's going to be okay, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of, it brings up all the silliness to superstitions when you put it that way. So that's the biggest thing I teach, or I tell to a lot of young goalies and goalies I teach, is to kind of let a lot of that stuff go.
Okay. Last question for you here, in terms of being with Tulsa. Have you ever had a chance to talk with any of the pro goalies within the Ducks organization? And I guess by extension, probably not, but the Rangers as well, since you do have the Rangers prospect. Have you, when you worked with the San Diego Gulls there, how much chatter did you get to have with the Gulls goalie coach? Same thing with the Ducks as well. Have you ever had a chance to talk to guys like John Gibson or Lucas Stollstahl? And I know that Sudarshan Maharaj just came back from cancer, and we're very happy that he is still around. Have you ever had a chance to talk to those guys at all because of the connections with Tulsa?
I haven't had a chance to talk to many of the goalies just yet. I haven't bumped into them at all, but and the day that I bump into John Gibson in Tulsa is going to be a pretty bad day for him, so I might even just let him be. Uh, but no, I had a really good experience in San Diego, and they were really great to me while I was there too. And we Jeff Glass, who's actually an Alberta guy, he's based from
Right.
Calgary originally. He's the Gulls goalie coach and has been for a couple of years. And Sudsy, as you'd mentioned, he's the director of goaltending in Anaheim, and he was there for all of camp and most of my time there as well. And they're both awesome to me. They treated me like I was one of their guys, there full time, and I got a lot of reps and a lot of looks and a lot of great feedback from them too, and a lot of good work in. We'd get on the ice early every day with them, and then stay after practice as well and work on some stuff for a while too. And yeah, I got a lot of good feedback, and they've been awesome. The nice thing too with having this, that affiliation, having one of their prospects here, is that they've both come to visit a little bit. So Sudsy's been down here 2 or 3 times already, and he'll stay here for a few days to a week at a time. And the same idea, he'll run goalie sessions, and he always makes sure that I feel more than welcome to come out there and get reps as well. And he's been great for that. And he's always giving me feedback, and I love to kind of, when I'm not in net during practice, if all 3 of us are in Tulsa at the time, I love to pick his brain and get his thoughts on different plays and situations. And he's got a wealth of knowledge, and he's always happy to share it. So I'm really thankful for that. And same goes for Glasser. He normally will meet up with us when we're on the road somewhere for an extended time. Like, I know he's met us in Tahoe and well as Idaho for some of our trips there, and will run sessions with us either at morning skate or on the off day when we have practice or something. And he's also been absolutely awesome to me too. And, he's a great resource. And I guess that's the other benefit of having goalies from 2 different organizations, is that the Rangers have sent a lot of their development guys here as well to,
That was going to be my next question.
to come check in on Boyks. And so we've had Hartford's goalie coach, Brendan Burke, who is Sean Burke's son and former U of A goalie. He's been down a couple times, as well as their director of goaltending, Jean Ian. And he's been great too. He's a French guy, so I like to, brush up on my French a little bit and chat with him. And he's he's a beauty. So, and he's the same way too. He's always more than happy to get us some reps and give us some looks and give us some feedback. And so it's really awesome. And it's interesting too, because, each organization kind of has their different views on how certain situations or plays should be made. And so it's just giving me a lot of different feedback and, I guess, just options, right? And tools in my toolbox, and for me to choose to use accordingly. So I've been really blessed. A lot of teams in the coast don't get the opportunity to even see one goalie coach all year. And, I'm getting some 4 different pretty high class or, world class guys here pretty often. So I couldn't be more thankful for it.
No, that's great. Getting the opportunity to have those resources. No, that's awesome. For a time while after I graduated high school, I was still in contact with Curtis Muka.
Oh yeah,
from the All Kings there. So we chat every so often.
Mhm.
and all that. Schwartzy's obviously a busy guy, but
Yeah.
no, that's awesome. Okay, so I kind of bit of a two-part question here for you. I want to start with this one. Um, you and I obviously have worked together a couple of
Mhm.
times as coaches on the ice with Wyatt Waslinchuk and goalie coaches. So how did you start? How did you get in contact with Wyatt? How did you manage to come about into the system? And then how did you also start getting into goalie coaching as well? Because we also know that you have your own kind of goalie school company over on Instagram.
Yeah, I just lucked out. I growing up, I never really turned down many ice times. I didn't believe that there was such thing as bad ice time, or an ice time where I couldn't get better. And that's kind
11
of kid.
o'clock beer league players would say otherwise, but okay.
And as I've grown up, I've come to agree. And so I think there's times where I need to pick and choose it, especially now at the level I am. I can't maybe risk getting hurt at that 11 o'clock, beer league session somewhere in the summer.
Of course. Yeah.
I guess given that I'm doing this for a living now, but and that kind of bled into goalie coaching. I kind of take that approach more so now with goalie coaching. I think I make an okay living doing it in the off season, and I work for a lot of great goalie coaches back in the Edmonton area and over in the Okanagan region in BC when I'm there. And I think there's just so much value to be pulled from it, right? Not even just from a coaching standpoint, but even to implement in my own game. And I make a couple bucks while I'm doing it, so it's a really great setup. And yeah, I got a text from a random number I didn't recognize once and it was Wazzy. It just saying, "Hey, I've got this camp in Leduc. Your number was passed along to me. We're short a body. Could you come help us out?" And I was thinking to myself, like, Leduc's a little bit of a trek, and
Yeah.
and I
Right.
think I believe I was already in college at this point, and so I didn't have a vehicle at home at the time, and so it was like a little hard to manage that. But I'm so thankful that I did. I found a way to make it work, and I went and worked a few sessions for them, and I had a blast doing it, and I really appreciated all the organization and time and effort that Wazzy puts into his camps, into running a really professional business, right? Like he world class
Yeah.
business, and he's doing really well for himself, and deservingly so. He puts in so much work into it, and he's been a great resource and a great contact ever since. I've worked that camp in Leduc pretty much every year for the last few years now after that. And I've this past summer even worked for him for a couple weeks in Montana, and that was an awesome experience. And
Okay.
he's been absolutely unreal. A couple times I've had to drive through Minot too on my way to school, and I always make sure to stop in and grab lunch with him. And he's just so down to earth and an unreal guy. And I'm so thankful for that relationship I have with him, and looking forward to working with him more going forward. So, but I got into goalie coaching years ago now. I was really thankful for it. It's kind of come full circle. It was my first year in Sherwood Park. I was lucky enough on our Pee Wee team that we had a goalie coach that was there pretty often. It wasn't just somebody's dad either. I guess
Sure.
he was buddies with our head coach and wanted to help. And I was super driven then, and not to say that I'm not now, but I was really dialed in that year in particular and was really working hard and getting better. And I love that I had someone out at pretty much every practice to work with us and give me tips. And I just wanted to be a total sponge. And it worked out that he was actually running a goalie camp for the first time ever uh, that summer. His name is Bob Golden, and he was working with his partner Rick Rashog, and they had the Crease Masters goalie camp in Sherwood Park, and they had a pretty young beginner age group, and so they actually even offered to have me work that age group while being with the older one. And so I was training with them with the older group, and then I'd stay out and coach the younger one, even though I was only freaking 12 years old at the time. But we're talking with pure beginners who are 7 or 8. So that's where I got my kind of
Yeah.
dipped my toes in and got my feet wet, and I really loved the experience. It was awesome, and I ended up coaching with them every summer for the following 9 years after that. It was and I've got some longtime friends that have come out of those camps, and I had a great relationship with Rick and Bob, and they're like family to me now. And once COVID had happened, that their kids were kind of at a point where they were done, and they were kind of busy with life and everything else. This was just a purely side gig that they had for a couple weeks every summer, and it was getting to be a little too much for them. So for a number of years, the camps subsided, and I've actually, I guess the first time publicly announcing it, but I was really happy to recently take over the name and the brand from them. So they've passed it on to me, and I'm working with a good friend of mine that I grew up playing against and with and training with, Pierce Diamond, who's full time in
Okay, yeah,
Penticton now. And so we're taking this brand to kind of try to address a lot of goalies with online coaching and offering a program there as well as a lot of different video review and stuff. And so I'm really excited for that, and that'll hopefully lead to some summer camps as well, in different locations, right, based on the interest and what we kind of have going on. But
sure.
yeah, so it's been over 13 or 14 years now that I've been coaching in the summers, and the last couple summers now that I've been doing it full time and not just as a little side gig. And I love doing it, and I think it's something I could totally see myself going to when I hang up the pads.
Yeah, this will be my 10th year coaching goalies, so I'm very very
Yeah,
happy about that.
it flies by.
I've been it does, it absolutely does, because I started when I was 15, kind of in grade 11 that year, and then I've been working with Nathan for the last couple. So,
Hmm.
but no, that's been awesome. And no, yeah, like you said, Wazzy's a great guy. I don't know if he's listening or not, but Wyatt, we love you. I'm sorry I wasn't there last year.
That
But
guy's too
I'll
busy.
try to
He's
try.
got,
I
yeah.
know, I know, I know.
Oh no, he's the
Like
busiest
we
guy I know.
mentioned.
I think,
Oh, well, 100%.
yeah, he's got a million. I'm pretty sure
Yeah.
I think he's still over in Italy right now for the,
Oh, okay.
I believe it's the FISU games, the FISU, like the International Student Games with Team USA. So I should go check in and see how they're doing, and I'll probably reach out and catch up with him once they're back because I'm sure he's got a lot of stories to tell from that.
Awesome.
He's a fun guy.
Well, 100%. We definitely plan on having him on the pod here at some point. Um, Last couple of things, and then we'll let you go here for the day. Probably taking up a little bit more of your time than we promised. But you recently did the balanced goaltending Instagram takeover. That was fun to watch. How did that come to be? Where did that all come from?
Yeah, so I've known of Mike Broder for a little while. I followed along with his career. He's a Camrose Kodiaks alum, and then went on to play. Had a pretty long pro career and had a couple stints in the NHL with Ottawa. And since then, he's been in coaching, and I believe he coached against me. He was with Fort McMurray for a little bit when I was in the Alberta League, and since then, one of my longtime friends from Fort McMurray when I grew up there, Ethan Paul and Hatch, he's an awesome goalie and an even better guy. He went on to play at Lindenwood uh, for 4 years, and then this is his first year not playing, and he's gone on to be a full-time coach with a balanced goaltending and Mike. And he's living in Airdrie now. He's got his place there, and so a lot of their stuff is kind of located around that Calgary and northern Calgary area, and extending into Carstairs and closer to Red Deer. And he's also a scout for Spokane, so any goalies out
Okay,
there interested in getting looked at by a WHL scout, reach out to him and maybe book a couple sessions and get a couple bucks in his pocket. But he was
sure.
going to be gone for Spokane's camp actually, and was going to miss a camp that Balanced Goaltending was running that week, and asked me to kind of cover for him. And I happily obliged and house sat for him, and even got in a little training of my own with Mike before the camp would start, and just had an all around awesome experience with them, and really thankful for it, and for the connection I made with Mike and the other coaches there. And Ethan, he runs all the social media for them now. It's part of his duties, and he had asked me as a favor to do the takeover and kind of hopefully generate a little bit of buzz. I don't know how successful that was. I don't have the biggest following myself, so but I was happy to do it and kind of share a glimpse into what the life's like here. And yeah, I guess that's how it came about. And I hope it helped him on his end, and in terms of getting a couple more clicks for them and a couple new eyes on their account.
I don't know if you remember or not, but when goalie coaches and Wyatt were two separate entities, goalie coaches had Snapchat, and so on the Snapchat they did a similar thing. It was
Hmm.
kind of the account takeover for the day. Probably something
Yeah.
I should reach out to Nathan about, because I feel like that'd be a great DIY plug there. But No, it was very interesting, very cool just to kind of see the ins and outs of what you're going through down there in Tulsa, and I think even again afterwards, after you and I had now known each other for a couple of years, and just kind of seeing what you're doing, so I'm able to keep up with you that way because I know we don't talk a lot. We're both busy guys, but it was very interesting and
Mhm.
very exciting for you to go through that experience.
Totally. Yeah, that's actually as much credit as I'll give Ethan. He's working hard on the social media side of things, as well as on the ice with running sessions. Like it wasn't an original idea. He when he had reached out about it, I'd asked him, is there anything particularly he wants to see? And he's like, basically one of those, OG goalie coaches Snapchat takeovers. So yeah, I
Right.
used to be tuned in all the time with those and really enjoyed kind of keeping up with those, especially when it was someone that I maybe knew a little bit. I was, even more keen on watching what their life's like. And yeah, I think that was a great marketing move on their part and that brand. And I think that's a big reason why their brand has grown to be as big as it has and has been definitely a factor in Wazzy's success with goalie coaches as well.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, well we'll kind of start to wrap things up here, but again, I just one more thing. I mean, I'm turning into Kevin Woodley here in this regard, where it's just one more question after one more question. But I feel like it's important. I feel like it's important here, like we mentioned earlier, and you might have already talked about it, so you can call me out. You have your own goalie coaching company on Instagram, Luke Lush Goaltending.
Yeah.
Um, kind of talked about it already, where the previous owners had kind of passed their kind of brand along over to you there. Now you're doing some work with Pierce. How's that going? Is there anything that we can expect from you over the summer this year? Just where's that at currently?
Totally. I haven't posted in quite a while now on my personal goalie account, the Luke Lush goaltending. Just been busy with other things but yeah, Pierce and I we've been working kind of around the clock actually. There's a lot more work that goes into building a website and a whole program and everything than people might expect. And we're trying to make
Right,
it look as professional as possible and doing our best there and making sure the biggest thing is providing value, to all of our clients and wanting to make sure that, especially the online platform, making sure that you're over delivering, right? I think oftentimes, there's everyone's trying to sell something online and you order it and then you don't, the last thing you want is kind of be left feeling empty handed a little bit. So that's been our big focus and there's a lot of work going into it. So yeah, if everyone follows me on Luke Lush Goaltending, we'll be announcing it soon. And our accounts on Instagram at least is crease.masters. And so we'll be seeing that. And then
okay.
online. Our website should be up pretty shortly here. It'll be cmgoaltending.com. And yeah, we're really excited for it. We'll have a few official announcements here shortly. And yeah, I've got really, high hopes for it. And I think it could be a really great thing. And yeah, I'm still not for sure, but I'll likely be all around the Edmonton area again. So I'm always running ice times there. Uh, Kind of depending on the demand at the time. I don't advertise or book too much in advance, just given that my schedule can be a little hectic and unpredictable. But I contract myself out to a lot of different goalie coaches, and between ATC goaltending, Dave Rathjen goaltending, Ian Gordon goaltending, as well as like the balanced goaltending when I'm around Calgary. I also with Pierce Diamond at Diamond Cut Goaltending when I go visit BC. I work with OHA Penticton a little bit, so I'm a little all over the map. Uh,
Okay.
but these are all people that have played a role in my development as a goalie, and I like trying to give back as little, as much as I can there. And
No,
I have
for
a lot of
sure.
fun working with all of them and getting a lot of insight for them too. So it's been really a valuable experience for me, and
Right.
I'm really happy to be able to return some of that.
Well, True North Goaltending will have their summer sessions coming up here, so we'll see if we can convince
Perfect.
Nathan to get you out there. But regardless of that, I guess lastly here, what's one piece of advice for young goalies out there? What's kind of like the number one thing that you always tell goalies that come up through your system?
The two is, just trusting the process, but most importantly is enjoy it. I guess going kind of tying it back into the gear is for the longest time it's something I've actually had embroidered on my gear. On my glove, I always have just keep it simple, and on the blocker it just says enjoy it, right? And try to enjoy the moment and enjoy the experience. And because at the end of the day, that's why we do it, right? We do it for our enjoyment and development as people and as players. And try not to get too bogged down by the politics of it all and everything, because we all go through it one way or another, and you can either overcome it or just fall victim to it, right? And it's totally fine. And frankly, it happens at every level. I dealt with it in college.
Right.
Haven't yet dealt with it really in pro, and knock on wood, I don't have too much, but it does happen at every level. And so don't think that you're the one and only victim in the world going through whatever it is at the time, right? At whatever level, because it happens, and you can either deal with it or move on. And so those are the two big things. Just trust the process, and if you keep working, you'll get rewarded for it at some point, and you don't know when that is, but just be ready for when it does happen. And yeah, do your best to enjoy it. Otherwise, there's really no point to it.
Awesome. Well, Luke, as always, it is a fun time here on this podcast, and I'm definitely happy to have you. Where can people find you? Obviously, we talked about the Luke Lush goaltending over on Instagram. Talked a little bit about Crease Masters there as well. But where can people personally find you over on the social media platforms that are still around as long as TikTok still doesn't get banned?
Yeah, thankfully I haven't got too much into TikTok, so I won't be affected much by that. But yeah, like you said, at Luke Lush Goaltending on Instagram is probably the best place to find me. You can also reach out to my personal account, which is Luke W. Lush. And then, yeah, I guess keep your eyes tuned. We'll have Crease.masters up and running shortly here. But yeah, the Luke Lush Goaltending is definitely the best one to reach me at. And feel free to reach out with any questions or tips or anything like that you might need help with. I'm more than happy to share whatever I can to, help aid in a goalie's journey.
Absolutely. We'll link all that down in the show notes there. Luke, my friend, thank you very much for coming on. Much appreciated. Definitely happy to have you here.
Awesome. Well, thank you for having me, Connor. It was awesome.
Perfect. And for all you goalies out there, thank you very much for listening. Much appreciated here at the DIY Goalie Podcast. If you are new to the podcast, first off, thank you for listening. Much appreciated. But again, you can give us a follow on all your favorite social media or all your favorite podcasting platforms, whether it be on Apple, iHeart, Spotify. You can also find us on the social media platforms as well, alongside with Luke at the DIY Goalie across all social media. If you are in the Edmonton area, please feel free to check us out over at truenorthgoaltending.com. We do have a few promotions that are happening as of right now, where we do have our July 4-day camp and our August 5-day camp. Those are both live over at True North Goaltending. We are also, again, offering special prices to first-year goalies. You can go check that out there at truenorthgoaltending.com. And then we also have our open house happening at February 4th and February 6th, 5 to 9 p.m. at the new training facility that we have out there in NISTU. All that will be provided at truenorthgoaltending.com. Again, you can follow us on the social media platforms for True North Goaltending, which is just True North Goaltending. But except for Instagram, because we like to be different, it's at YEG Goalie. Luke, again, much appreciated. I'm sure Nathan would love to have you on, or would have loved to have had a chat with you, but we'll definitely have to get you back on again sometime.
Yep, you betcha. Looking forward to it.
Perfect. Well, that's it from us, guys. Thanks so much for listening. Thanks so much for watching over on YouTube as well. Make sure you hit a like and subscribe. We'll see you guys next time. Make some saves. Take care.